Around 4,000 years ago, something happened on Earth that was written down in the Enuma Elish, the Finnish Kalevala, the Scandinavian Eddas, over the Linda, and also in the Kolbrin. The writings were forgotten or were hidden away for centuries, but this will happen again. God says in Matthew 10 verse 26, "Fear them not therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known." That is what is happening now. If a nation forgets its past, it will not survive its future. Millennia ago, the people on Earth were almost wiped out. According to ancient manuscripts, it will happen again, and right now it seems we are getting uncomfortably close to it. Those who will survive will write everything down, and in a few millennia from now, it will start all over again, because people don't learn from mistakes, and especially not from history. In the Over the Linda book, a description is given of what happened shortly before the cataclysms during which Atlantis sank. Most historians do not accept this 4,000-year-old manuscript, but I will give the description nonetheless, because we should learn from the past. It is said, during the whole summer, the sun hid behind the clouds as if it was unwilling to look at the earth. There were long windless stretches, and the damp smoke and mist hung like a wet sail over the houses and marshes. The air was heavy and oppressive, and in the hearts of people there were neither joy nor happiness. And then the earth started shaking, as if it was dying. During the catastrophes that followed, Atlantis would sink. This happened in the northern hemisphere. In the Ura-Linda book, Frana, an honored regent of Texland, which later became known as Germany, made a prophecy just before she died. She said, "Far into the future, the sons of godless rulers and priests will revolt and start a series of bloody wars in which many of them will die." She also said that these wars will be fought on and off for more than 1,000 years. When she was still alive, people knew there was only one God, one Almighty, and they worshipped Him. There was no Jesus and no Mary. The heathens worshipped the sun and the moon, as well as a host of other lesser deities. Frana said after the bloody wars there will be another 1,000 years of deepest darkness in which blood will be spit by evil priests over children. Then a new dawn will come, and your children will once again know peace. She referred to the Dark Ages. When the Roman Catholic Church entered the scene, rulers were influenced by the Catholics, and 70 million innocent people were killed for their faith in Jesus Christ. The wars of which she spoke continued until the 1600s and slowed down towards 1807, when the Old World ended and the Industrial Revolution started. It is devastating to the earth. The last time it happened was when Noah and his family were saved, and Atlant, or Atlantis as it is known today, disappeared beneath the waves. This catastrophe is due again soon. Life as we know it is going to end, and people are not ready for it. In all 5 of these writings, there is mentions of cataclysms of horrifying proportions. They all say the same things, and they all warn future generations to be vigilant. Our Bible also warns of the same cataclysms, but does not go into detail, and prophets today emphasize only the 3 days of darkness. That is only part of what we may expect. Mark chapter 13 verse 19 and 20 is the understatement of the century. For in those days there shall be affliction such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom He hath chosen. He hath shortened the days. Everyone will be tested. It will be the worst we can imagine, worse than when Noah built his ark. Believing in the rapture will not be of any help, because Jesus said everyone on earth has to be tested before being saved. God didn't spare Noah's friends or family other than him and his children. No one was taken away into heaven and then brought back again. We will all be dragged through the fire to be tested like Daniel and his friends were. Only our faith and trust in God will save us from being destroyed. We will be tested. Baruch 29 verse 1 says, "And he answered and said to me, Whatever then happens will be over the whole earth, therefore everyone who lives then will experience it. There is no talk of any rapture." In Baruch 25 verse 2 to 4 it says, "This will therefore be the sign. when the stunned state of despair grabs the inhabitants of earth, when they have to go through many tribulations, and that when they will go through great torment, it will happen when they in their minds say that because of their many afflictions, the Almighty does not think of the earth anymore. Yes, it shall happen when their hope had abandoned them, that the time will awaken. Perhaps the time for real change is now. In the previous video, we have discussed the age of Aquarius that will rule for 2000 years, but the age before was the age of Pisces, a particularly evil age. The age of Pisces was typified by greed, consumerism, corruption, war, and being ruled by the masculine principle and of the patriarch. The Aquarian age will be ruled by the feminine principle, or that of the matriarch. It's time of community, caring, compassion, partnership. It's about getting back to love and remembering that we care for one another. But during the transition from Pisces to Aquarius, people would, in their confusion, still rather cling to their own convictions, mostly based on the lies and deceit from the media. The state the world is in now is the reason why destruction is sure to come before we can enter the new age of peace. Soon we will face almost extinction, but because of Christ, God's children will be saved. There is no need to try to diminish the world population to make it a better place. God is soon going to do it himself. He has to get rid of the evil people and doings of the age of Pisces. This is what Wikipedia has to say, for instance, on the matter of overpopulation. The plague of Justinian caused Europe's population to drop by around 50% between the 6th and 8th centuries AD. The population of Europe was more than 70 million in 1340. From 1340 to 1400, just 60 years, the world's population fell from an estimated 443 million to 375 million, with the Indian subcontinent suffering the most tremendous loss and Europe suffering the Black Death pandemic. This is a drop of almost 100 million, close to 25% of the population. It took 200 years for the European population figures to recover. The population of China decreased from 123 million in 1200 to 65 million, almost 50% in 1393, presumably from a combination of Mongol invasions, famine, and plague. And it all happened without the meddling of scientists. It is interesting to note that people who think it's necessary to bring the population down are not interested in the whole world, only the white people and the Christians in particular. Nature will anyway always find a way to balance the population of Earth. There is no need to play God and suddenly step in and try to make things right. Right now, they are pushing for a world war to diminish the population. The only problem is that God himself will pick up the gauntlet and will punish the world like never before. Climate change is also being pushed as a validation for the insane idea of bringing down the number of people in the world. It is also very possible that climate change isn't a real threat, just propaganda for an agenda, because where is the threat to humanity? The current warnings of temperature increases of 0.6 degrees to 0.8 degrees are nothing irregular and fit into the natural rate of the warming recorded over the last few centuries. It's a cyclical matter, no need for alarmism. Though there is absolutely no proof that CO2 is the main driver of global warming, as ancient ice core measurements have proven that CO2 levels in the past have often changed after a temperature drop or increase. The ratio of man-made CO2 to natural CO2 on Earth is about 1 to 2,400. That means, if a 12-ounce glass held Earth's entire CO2, man's portion would be about 2 drops. The assumption that CO2 is a pollutant is also completely false. It makes up about 0.4% of our atmosphere, and global crops set new production records virtually every year as our planet modestly warms. Updated data from NASA satellite instruments reveal the Earth's polar ice caps have not receded at all since the satellite instruments began measuring the ice caps in 1979. Since NASA precisely began measuring those 35 years ago with satellite instruments, cumulatively, polar ice sheets have not declined at all. Geoengineering scientists working on blocking the sun's rays to cool the planet say that even if we completely stopped carbon dioxide emissions today, the Earth will continue warming over the next several decades. We need at least some proof if they want us to believe all they say. Show us the proof of rising sea levels. Tell us where all the water from melting glaciers has gone because the sea levels didn't rise. According to the National Geographic, the total of the Earth's surface is approximately 510 million square miles, and the ocean covers about 71% of that surface, which is about 36 million square kilometers. The melting of the glaciers did nothing to make the sea levels rise, and it never will. When there is an iceberg in the water, 9/10 of it is below the surface already. The last 10% won't make any difference if it melts. The mere fact that an iceberg can float means that a lot of air is trapped in the ice. It is not all water. It does seem as if the prophets can sense something is wrong, but it doesn't appear in their visions. Edgar Cayce said that with the shifting of the Earth's magnetic poles that began in 1998, there will come a gradual melting of the polar ice caps and eventually cause inundations of many coastal regions, resulting in a drop in the landmass of about 30 feet. So far, that didn't happen. In 1941, he elaborated on this effect. As to conditions in the geography of the world, changes here are gradually coming about. Many portions of the east coast will be disturbed, as well as the west coast, also the central portion of the US. In the next few years, land will appear in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And what is the coastline now of many a land will be the bed of the ocean. Even many battlefields of the present will be ocean, will be the seas, the bays, the lands over which the New World Order will carry on their trade as one with another. He didn't make a mistake, he just didn't have the right timeline. The real changes will come when the war is fought, when God will intervene, and when the earth will shift on its axis. That is when all this will happen. It will not be the war that will cause all this, but something completely different. We should not pay attention to dates given, and we still have a few questions that need answers. Like, why are there no out of the ordinary rising in temperatures at the moment? We still have sunny beaches, which incidentally didn't shrink because of more water in the ocean. And sometimes the winters are very cold and the summers very hot, as they had always been. Farmers still bring in their crops. Trees and plants still grow. There are droughts and monsoons, and babies are still born every year. We have not seen a shred of evidence to back up the claim of the so-called scientists that Earth is in a crisis because of climate change. They claim that cattle, sheep, and all the rest of the animal kingdom produce too much methane and have to be slaughtered. They tell us to eat bugs like chickens and birds do. They expect people to live in temperatures below zero without heat. They stopped the production of oil in the West, but they sanctioned import from other countries, probably only for the convenience of the elite. Why? The insanity of it all has become a monster that eats into the psyche of the people. It messes with their brains, because it is impossible to understand the crooked logic of it all. Actually, there is no logic in this whatsoever. These are not the intellectual ideas of intelligent people. Can we then blame the younger generation for being defiant? These so-called scientists argue that the sound cats make is because they copy babies for attention. Then we must assume that the sound elephants make is because they've listened to the sound of trumpets during a parade, and they want to start their own parade. Scientists are fast losing their credibility. The domestic animals that are being slaughtered are allegedly the reason for deforestation. How? They have nothing to do with the forests, but talking of deforestation, no one makes a peep about what is going on in the Amazon rainforest. The Guardian reports, MAAP or MARP estimates that 13.2% of the original Amazon forest biome has been lost due to deforestation and other causes. This equates to more than 85 million hectares or 211 million acres, an area about 1/10 the size of the United States or China. The map shows the total forest loss in the original Amazon forest biome. Why doesn't anyone put a stop to that? Kim Haycox wrote in an article in The Guardian of the 7th of October in 2022, the Amazon rainforest is losing about 10,000 acres a day. Soon it will be too late. Since 1988, humans have destroyed an area of rainforest roughly the size of California. Now, that is a statement that we should pay attention to. The Amazon rainforest was once a great carbon absorber, but now it releases more carbon than it stores. This will definitely spell trouble, not the fertilizing dung the cattle drop. That incredibly beautiful forest is being destroyed for profit. it will take many decades for it to grow back, if it ever does. With it, many species of birds, animals, reptiles, and insects will also be wiped out. The poor cows have nothing to do with it. There are movements to save the rhino or save the whales, save anything on earth except the people. They are apparently dispensable. There is an organization called Genocide Watch, which doesn't mean a thing. It has never stopped a single genocide. All they do is what their name says. They watch, and they don't try to stop the killing of any humans now. Fear causes people to accept anything that is thrown their way, but God told us not to fear and to trust Him. Unfortunately, many preachers preach blind obedience to the government, and in that way, they too are fearmongers. They say, if you don't fear the government, they'll come and get you. God says you must obey the government, but the Bible says, fear God alone. While all this is going on, no one says a word about something terrifying from outer space that is coming Earth's way. Few people talk about it, and they are laughed to scorn for it. But NASA and the astronomers are watching. They even gave it a name, Apophis, the name of the Egyptian god of destruction. Will it miss Earth? We simply don't know. Instead of preparing for the possible arrival of this body from deep space, people lost their way. We have a derailed society in many countries in the West, and a whole generation of Americans being butchered for attention. They don't heed the warnings. The elite and their lead horse, the media, are playing with fire.
One person in the United States and one person in Russia could decide all by themselves to have a nuclear conflict.
When the monster passes by Earth, they will be the first to run and hide, and they will leave the rest of the population to fend for themselves, believing that when it is all over, they will walk out of hiding as the new rulers of the world. But no bunker on Earth will be safe, no matter how deep it is underground. American and British generals, war strategists, and everyone who was organizing the war in the Ukraine were in a bunker in the Ukraine 2.5 kilometers underground. The Russians fired missiles which destroyed the bunker, and they were all killed. Never assume anything. God isn't going to allow these troublemakers to survive. These organizations who are working towards their own goal, believing they can sidestep the Creator and firmly believes that God does not exist, will be dealt with in a brutal way. They are the ones angering Him, but the whole world will pay because we didn't stop them. For now they are content with just killing babies who cannot defend themselves. God knew when He created us that we will have to live on a beautiful but also very dangerous planet. He gave us wisdom so that we will know what to do when bad things happen, and He gave us a set of rules to follow if you want to live a happy life. Those 10 rules have been thrown out the door, and it looks like common sense and wisdom went with it. So why are we in the dark? Why do we believe lies? And why did we not see this blight coming? God gave us preachers and teachers to educate us that we will not be unduly afraid. But in 2020, we were lambs led to the slaughter. And no preacher said a word, no prophet warned us. In Hosea 4 verses 6 and 7, God speaks against the preachers, and He says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me." Through this attitude, the knowledge of the cause of the deluge was lost to time. Disbelief and the discarding of vital information is the major sin of preachers and teachers. There is another special warning to preachers in Matthew 5 verse 20. "Except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven." They have an obligation towards their flock. Jesus loves the innocent, and the price that those who influence the children will pay for their arrogance is high. Luke 17 verses 1 and 2. "It is better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck, and he be cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones." The West has been weakened by America's influence, and still they are convinced that the armies of the East will not be able to stand against them. That is probably not true. The possibility was mentioned that Zelensky is draining the West of their weapons and ammunition so that when Russia attacks the West, they will be almost helpless. Their weapons will be in the Ukraine. The world is already too far on its way to a war to be stopped, and people don't have the faintest idea of what is waiting for them. Mother Shipton prophesied, "Then tax and blood and cruel war shall come to every humble door. There will be very little chance of escaping it." Sieur van Rensburg prophesied that with the next world war, the blood will run in streams on the ground between tussocks like water does in a thunderstorm. The ground will be soaked with blood, but that is not all. When God intervenes, we will know it, and the Egyptians wrote it. The Egyptians wrote, "The land was completely destroyed and nothing was left. The sun was veiled and shone where no one could see it. No one knew when it was midday, shadows could not be distinguished. There is a plague in the land, there is blood everywhere, the land spins like a potter's wheel. Oh, if only the earth will not make so much noise, and if only the clamor would stop." This was written thousands of years ago, and we should not ignore it. In each new video, more of these prophecies will be discussed. Prophets tell of violence on earth, and from those prophecies we can deduct that it will come at the same time as when there will be a great war being fought. How much violence will it take to change the course of rivers, as some of them say, or to make countries disappear beneath the waves, or to make new lands rise above the water, or cause new mountains to rise? That is what the prophets wrote. And what will it take for humans to survive under those circumstances? The Irish, Celtic, and Iceland legends tell of a time of fire, ice, and floods that destroyed the northern hemisphere. Almost everyone died except those who were lucky enough to escape on ships. There are quite a few stories in different countries about a ship on which people escaped the water in the time of Noah. But how do you escape fire? One of the people who wrote down about what happened in the time of Atlantis, Adele, said that the earth had changed so much 3 years after the disappearance of Atlantis that small colonies of Frisians still struggled to survive, and that they learned a valuable lesson during the time. Unity is strength. Before that happens, we will possibly have a war, and after that, we will have a very unsure future.